My parents and twin sister threw me out when I was just 16. No warning, no second thoughts. I ended up living in a tent, scraping by day after day, trying not to fall apart. Now, 12 years later, I have my own house, something I fought tooth and nail to build. And suddenly, they show up, uninvited, my sister's whole family in tow, demanding that I take them in. The irony? It was my sister who asked my parents to kick me out, said there wasn't enough room for both of us. She was always good at getting what she wanted. Now she's back, pregnant with her 4th child, and my parents are acting like it's my duty to shelter her. I'm 28 years old, and I've been wading through their poison since I was old enough to understand what rejection felt like. People romanticize twins, say there's this unbreakable bond. In my case, my sister made it her mission to make my life miserable. When the bullying at school ended, she picked up where it left off. And just when I thought she was finally out of my life, she came storming back in. She wants to move in with me, her whole clan, like she didn't orchestrate my exile when we were teens. Selfish and manipulative to the core, traits nurtured by our parents who made it very clear they only ever wanted a daughter. I was a byproduct, an accident. They even told me with zero shame that if it weren't for my sister, they would have terminated the pregnancy. I existed because she did, and she never let me forget it. My childhood? A nightmare of being invisible in a house that only had eyes for her. Same age, born on the same day, but I wasn't allowed to touch her toys. She got new clothes every other month. I got 2 sets a year, one for Christmas and one for my birthday. And if I hadn't shared a birthday with her, I doubt mine would have been acknowledged at all. I was given only what was necessary, just enough so the relatives wouldn't raise eyebrows. The only person who ever treated me like I mattered was my grandfather. He saw through the performance. He knew the truth. When he died, I was 13. It was the worst day of my life. After that, I had no one left. We lived in a cramped house in the suburbs. Technically, my sister and I shared a room. Realistically, I had a bed shoved in the corner and a plastic crate under it for my things. The rest was hers, walls covered in her posters, floor buried under her clothes and toys. I wasn't even allowed in during the day. That was her space. Even when I was sick, I wasn't allowed to rest in my own bed. I was banished to the living room couch because girls need privacy. I counted down the days until I turned 18 and could finally escape. But as it turned out, they beat me to it. When we were 16, my sister hooked up with a 19-year-old burnout who had flunked 8th grade 3 times. His parents married them off and handed him a janitor job at the same factory where his father worked as a mechanic. He moved in, and surprise, I had to make room for him. Our house barely fit the people already in it. I asked if I could take the couch, but my father claimed it for himself whenever my mother's snoring got unbearable in winter. Then came the final blow. You'll have to find somewhere else to stay. That loser added fuel to the fire. Told me to stop whining. Dude, it's not that hard to figure your life out. I got a family now. You will too. Easy for him to say. He had a roof over his head. I didn't. Most of our relatives lived miles away, and my parents made it clear I was never to show up at their doors. Didn't want the family to see what they were really like. I asked friends if I could crash with them, but their parents wouldn't hear of it. If my own family didn't want me, why should anyone else? One classmate let me stay in the garage for a while, until his parents found out and threw me out. I slept on benches, for days, until the cops picked me up and brought me back home. My parents spun a lie about me running away. They took me in temporarily, just long enough to keep up appearances. Then my father dragged a filthy old tent from a dumpster and said I could set it up behind the house. A gift, he called it, for keeping quiet around the cops and not contacting our relatives. The tent kept the rain out, but winter was hell. One night, I thought I wouldn't make it. I knocked on the back door. Nothing. I tapped on their bedroom window, frozen to the bone. My father shouted from inside not to disturb his sleep, or he'd come out and beat the crap out of me. That night broke something in me. I sobbed until sunrise. The next day, I walked around, desperate to find work, any work. Eventually, I found a bakery about 30 kilometers away. They needed a helper in a small production facility, and the owner offered food and a place to stay. They baked bread right out of their home and needed someone to clean up. I agreed on the spot. The backyard was a mess: flour, sugar, rats. But I didn't care. I was already at rock bottom. I had nothing left to lose. I packed my things and left. My sister actually smiled when I walked out. Good riddance. We didn't have room for you anyway. No one asked where I was going. No one cared. I cleaned up that yard and made it livable. The rats took time to chase off, but I did it. It became my space. I was supposed to graduate that year. My friends begged me to come back, to stay in my parents' yard and at least finish school. But I was done. I worked hard, earned my keep, and that was enough. I realized pretty quickly that if I wanted a better life, I had to claw my way up. So I did. I picked up a few skills. My father's a mechanic, and ever since I was a kid, I'd been tinkering with his tools, getting my hands greasy while he barked orders. It was the only kind of bonding we ever had. I scraped together every penny I could, took a course, and landed a job at a car factory. From there, I worked my ass off. No shortcuts, no favors, just sweat, grit, and long hours. Now, I'm a supervisor. Not long ago, an old friend was desperate to sell his house. Messy divorce. He needed someone to take it off his hands fast. It was a 3-bedroom place, bigger than I ever thought I'd own, but he gave me a great deal and even offered to delay the down payment. I didn't hesitate. I signed the papers, packed up, and 2 weeks later, I moved in. My house. My peace. Or so I thought. This morning, they showed up. Out of nowhere. My parents, my sister, and, like a bad punchline, her loser husband, Bill. I hadn't heard from them in years. They hadn't called, texted, emailed, nothing. They didn't even know where I lived. Or at least, I thought they didn't. My new place is a good 25 kilometers away from the neighborhood we grew up in. No chance they just stumbled across it. I don't keep in touch with relatives or post much on social media, so I figured someone must have ratted me out. Maybe a neighbor saw a photo and passed it along, or maybe my dad pulled some strings and found my address through my job. Either way, there they were, standing on my doorstep like it was some long-awaited family reunion. The moment I opened the door, they barged in like they owned the place. "Look at this! We're so proud of you," my mom gushed as they shuffled in. I forced a smile and motioned to the chairs. No couch yet. Just the basics, a bed, some chairs, and a table. I hadn't even finished unpacking. They sat down, sizing up the place like real estate agents. "How'd you afford this?" they asked, blinking like I'd pulled the money out of thin air. They couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that, at 28, I had my own house while they were still scraping by in a rented dump. Meanwhile, my sister and Bill were already wandering through the halls like they were planning where to hang curtains. "What's going on?" I finally asked. "Why are you here?" They gave me a half-hearted line about just wanting to check in. Right. After 12 years of silence, they suddenly wanted to check in. And coincidentally, it's when I finally got something for myself. Then came the sob stories. Dad's health is deteriorating, high blood pressure. My sister has 3 kids, 14, 9, and 4, and surprise, she's pregnant again. Congratulations, I muttered, leaning back in my chair, debating whether I should scream at them or calmly ask them to leave. Mom started probing. Are you seeing anyone? Planning to get married? I shot back. That's none of your business. She chuckled like we were joking around. Someone's cranky. Are you having trouble settling in? Everything was fine, I said coldly, until you showed up. She brushed it off and offered to help with the house. That's when my sister chimed in, like she'd already decided. We'll take the bedroom with the balcony and bath. I'm so excited to have a private bathroom again. The kids can take the other room. I just stared at her. Was this a joke? You live alone in a 3-bedroom house, she continued, as if I hadn't heard the first insane sentence. You don't need all this space. You used to live in a tent, remember? A room's an upgrade for you. My jaw clenched. Her toddler started crying, and my parents tried to calm him down, but I turned to them and snapped, "What the hell is going on?" Mom answered, like this was all perfectly reasonable. Your sister's place is too crowded. Her oldest sleeps on the couch. The other 2 share beds. And now with the baby on the way. Then she delivered the punchline. You have a big house now. Why not take your sister in? No, I said, loud and sharp. Absolutely not. My sister exploded. You owe me. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be alive. You owe me this house. Same tired script. Different day. I looked around the room, suddenly claustrophobic. Thank you for bringing me into this world, I said. Now get the hell out of my house. Dad tried to go full patriarch mode. As the man of the house, it's your responsibility to take care of your sister. My responsibility? I shouted. You had one job, to take care of your own kid, and you failed spectacularly. Now you want me to pick up the pieces? I reminded them of everything, the tent, the rats, the factory garage, the years of silence. Not one of you ever asked how I was doing, I said, voice trembling. You didn't check in. You didn't care. So don't pretend now. Mom reached out to hug me, like that would fix it. I stepped back. Number just, get out. Then Bill opened his mouth. Bro, I've lived like this for years. It's not that bad. You've got so much space. Why not share it? I pointed to the door. Shut up! My sister screamed at me for disrespecting her husband. I told her she could either leave or I'd knock him out myself. They didn't get another word in. I threw them all out before they could make another excuse. And now I'm sitting here, boiling with rage. They've always been toxic, selfish, manipulative. But now they're desperate and greedy. The worst combo. I'm not that 16-year-old anymore. I'm not their doormat. And if they keep pushing, I won't hesitate to call the cops. They broke in. Yeah. My sister and her deadbeat husband broke into my house. And no, for those of you wondering, she never offered to pay rent. She can't. They've been leeching off my parents for over a decade, popping out kids like it's a career, and now they want to mooch off me too. Do my parents like it? Not really. I saw it in their faces the last time they came over. They're tired. But instead of kicking her out, they tried to hand me the problem like I'm some kind of backup plan. A week after their little visit, my mom showed up again. Alone this time. This time, she didn't waste a second. You need to let your sister move in with you, my mom said bluntly. I didn't flinch. Absolutely not. She launched into her familiar lament. How impossible it was to cram so many people into one tiny house. How everyone was on top of each other. And how things were just so hard. Again I said, no. That's when she changed tactics, dropped the pity card, and reached for something darker. I should have seen it coming. "You know, honey," she said, suddenly sweet, "you live alone in this big house, and you're gone 12 hours a day. What if something happens? What if someone breaks in? If you had family here, you'd be safer. And we could help with the chores, cleaning, laundry, dishes." I stared at her. "Number, get out. I don't want any of you in my house." A few days passed. Then my neighbor, an older man who spends most of his days parked on his porch, knocked on my door. He told me he'd seen a pregnant woman, a man, and a kid snooping around my place, peeking through windows, wandering in the backyard like they were casing the place. When they realized they were being watched, they took off. I thanked him, gave him my number, and asked him to call me if he saw anything else. I hadn't set up the security cameras yet. That was supposed to happen over the weekend, but they didn't wait. A couple days later, he called again. "I think someone's inside your house." I raced home. My heart was pounding by the time I pulled into the driveway. He was right. My sister and Bill had broken in through a window in the backyard. She stood there, arms crossed, defiant. "We didn't have a choice. You were being a jerk and wouldn't let us in." Then she said the words that made my blood run cold. "We live here now, so get over it." Before I could respond, Bill sauntered out of one of the bedrooms they'd claimed and said with a smug grin, "But it worked." I snapped. Without thinking, I charged at him. My sister tried to block me. I shoved her aside and landed a punch right in his face. Then her 14-year-old came at me with a bottle. He cracked me across the head. I felt the warm rush of blood, but I stayed conscious. Barely. Everyone panicked. My sister fumbled for her phone and called our parents. Bill and the boy scrambled to clean up the mess. My neighbor, bless him, had already called the cops. Suddenly, my sister and Bill were all apologies, begging me not to press charges, swearing their son didn't mean it. I told them all straight, "You're going to jail." The police showed up, took my statement. My sister denied everything, said they were just visiting, her son made a joke, and I tripped and hurt myself. Claimed I was out for revenge and making it all up. Fortunately, my neighbor had seen enough. He backed my story. Based on his testimony, the cops cuffed them and took them in. No one could make bail, so they spent the night behind bars. The next day, while I was at the hospital getting checked for internal injuries, they were in court. I took a couple days off to recover, then filed charges, assault and trespassing. I demanded compensation for legal and medical costs. The court ruled in my favor. My parents tried everything to make me drop the charges, pleaded, guilt-tripped, even tried to gaslight me. But I warned them that if they kept pushing, I'd sue them for aiding and abetting the break-in. Because her son is still a minor, his case went through juvenile court. He was placed in a youth facility for a week. His parents had to cover my missed wages and hospital bills. Bill and my sister were hit with a hefty fine, part of which they begged to convert into community service. It's been quiet since, but not for long. Yesterday, my parents showed up at my door again. I slammed it shut in their faces. They stood outside, knocking and begging for nearly an hour. Eventually, I let them in. Maybe I shouldn't have. God, how I wish I could have leaned out the window and screamed at them like my father did when he threw me out 12 years ago. They came in sniffling, already halfway to tears. "We need your help," they said. "If this has anything to do with my sister," I cut in, "forget it." They shook their heads. "It's not her, it's us. Son, we're getting old. I can't work like I used to. The house is falling apart. We can't keep up anymore." I stared at them. "Get to the point." They didn't flinch. "We want to move in with you. You're our son. It's your turn to take care of us." I laughed, bitterly. If you'd been responsible parents, maybe, but you weren't. I asked what would happen to their place. Were they planning to sell it? Break the lease? No, they said. We're giving it to your sister. Oh, so that's how it is. Let me get this straight, I said. You couldn't pawn her off on me, so now you're trying to dump yourselves here. Not happening. They tried a new angle. She's willing to pay rent, my dad said. You could use that for your mortgage. I scoffed. I don't need her money. I don't need anything from any of you. She can take care of herself, or not. It's her life to ruin. My mom burst into tears. She hasn't had a full night's sleep in years. Her kids are all in one room. She's exhausted. Not my problem, I snapped. She keeps having babies she can't afford. Whose fault is that? They kept pushing, tugging on every guilt string they could find. You won't take her in. You won't take us in. You won't compromise at all. You're living in a house that's too big for one person. I don't plan to be alone forever, I said. They pulled the final card. We're your parents. We raised you. You owe us. That did it. Karma, I said. Remember when you kicked me out like garbage? Now it's your turn. After that, I slammed the door in their faces and didn't look back. They left seething, but I didn't care. Let them be angry. I wasn't about to fold and play the pushover just to make everyone else comfortable. So go ahead. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. Personally, I think the author of this story was 100% right to stand their ground. But now, let's move on to something heavier. The day I found out my wife was cheating on me, now ex-wife, was also the day she landed in the hospital. And years later, she still can't stomach the fact that I'm engaged again. If there were an award for the worst possible way to discover infidelity, I'd not only win it, I'd have a damn exhibit in the Hall of Fame. I can still hear the shaky voice of her co-conspirator on the phone, repeating over and over, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was driving home from a week-long business trip, completely disoriented by the call, trying to figure out what the hell she was talking about. Only after I calmed her down a little did she choke out that my wife was in the hospital, and I needed to get there immediately. Panic took over. I was white-knuckling the wheel, heart racing, mind trying to make sense of the pieces, hospital, assault, wife. Then the line cut off, and she never picked up again. Let me rewind a bit. My ex and I met in our early 20s at a barbecue thrown by a mutual friend. She walked in like someone from another world, effortlessly beautiful, soft-spoken, almost ethereal in her quietness. At first, she felt too good to be true. We didn't jump into anything right away, but when we did, I fell hard. I was hooked. She had this vulnerability to her, like something broken but still shining underneath. The first time we tried to be intimate, she started crying. I froze. I thought I'd done something wrong, hurt her without realizing it. But the next day, she apologized. She said it wasn't me, that it had triggered something, that 2 years before we met, she'd been in a relationship with a man who emotionally, physically, and psychologically abused her. He'd used sex as a weapon, followed by remorseful apologies and more manipulation. She said she was still healing, that she was working through it in therapy, and asked for patience. I loved her, so I gave it. We moved slowly. It was hard, but I believed we were building something stronger because of it. A year later, we got engaged. We finally became intimate, and it felt like a milestone, not just physically, but emotionally. Around that time, I used some inheritance money from my late uncle to buy us a house. We planted a peach tree together in the yard, a fresh start, a new beginning. We got married not long after, and honestly, it was beautiful. Not perfect, of course, no marriage is, but we had something I thought was rare. Even when we fought, she never went to bed angry. She always made sure to talk things through, to tell me exactly what was bothering her, gently but clearly. Eventually, I got a big promotion at work. More money, but also more travel, conferences, meetings, weeks away from home. That's when she started pulling away. She wasn't as warm. She clung to her phone like a lifeline and stopped opening up. I tried asking what was wrong. She smiled, said it was just a phase, nothing to worry about, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She started staying over at her sister's place more often, said she just needed space to think. The night I got that call, the one that shattered everything, was one of those nights. She said she was going to her sister's, but instead she landed in a hospital bed. I burst into the ER barely breathing, demanding to know where my wife was. A calm, sympathetic policeman approached me. He said he was a friend of my sister-in-law and had responded to a domestic violence call. He described the scene, a man hitting a woman, the woman screaming, trying to push him off. And I instantly rejected it. No way. My wife? She was married. She wouldn't be in that kind of situation. She wasn't that kind of person. The officer put a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "That woman is your wife." I didn't want to believe him. I wanted to scream at him for even suggesting it. But there was something in his voice, something final, something real. A nurse led me back to her room. I can't describe what I saw. I just stood there, frozen. My legs barely held me up. Then the doctor came in and explained her injuries: fractured jaw, eye swollen shut, face covered in bruises, 3 broken ribs. And then he said the words that knocked the air out of my lungs. "She's pregnant." That was the moment everything fell apart. I couldn't understand how this had happened until I saw her sister. At first, she avoided my gaze, but under pressure from the cop, she finally came clean. Turns out, 5 months ago, my wife's abusive ex had resurfaced. Said he was in some redemption program, trying to make amends to those he hurt. He reached out under the guise of closure, and like a fool, she responded. They started talking more. He said he was different now, changed, asked to meet for coffee, to prove it. That led to more meetings. Emotions resurfaced. Old wounds, warped memories, who knows? He looked different, acted different. And eventually, the emotional betrayal became physical. Her sister knew. She didn't just keep the secret, she enabled it, gave her alibis, covered for her so she could meet him, told her to take her time and figure out what she wanted. And that's exactly what she did, until it ended with her broken, bleeding, and pregnant with another man's child. He ran around the yard, imagining they were deep in the heart of the wilderness, naming every tree in the garden as if it were part of some enchanted forest. I caught glimpses of him pretending to track wild animals, whispering commands to invisible teammates, the little flashlight in his hand doubling as both torch and lightsaber. His joy was radiant, the kind that made your chest ache in the best way possible. That night, when the fire was crackling and the air smelled like pine wood smoke and toasted sugar, he took his spot between us, me on his left, his mother on the right. My fiancé sat slightly behind, quietly watching the scene with a calm, patient smile, her hands wrapped around a mug of hot cocoa. My ex had tried once again to dominate the atmosphere, laughing too loudly, nudging my arm when it wasn't necessary, reminiscing about the old days as though they were something we both still wanted. But then my son asked her innocently, "Mom, why don't you like Auntie anymore?" The question froze her mid-sip. She looked at him, then at me, and something in her expression shifted. For once, there was no performance, no manipulation, just naked vulnerability. She hesitated, then said, "Because sometimes when people make really big mistakes, they need someone to blame, even if it's not fair." That was the first real moment of self-awareness I'd seen in her in years. Later that night, after my son had fallen asleep in the middle room of the tent, my ex stayed up sitting outside the flap near the fire. I walked out to grab another blanket and found her just staring at the embers. "Do you still hate me?" she asked without turning. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I sat beside her and looked at the stars. The silence stretched long between us. "I don't hate you," I finally said. "But I don't know you anymore, and I don't think I ever want to." She nodded slowly. "Fair." I stood up ready to go back inside when she said something that surprised me. "I want to try again. Not with you," she added quickly. "With myself. With my sister. With whoever's still willing. I don't want our son to grow up thinking love is just about pain and apologies. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't closure. But it was something." The next morning, we woke up to my son excitedly declaring that it was the best birthday ever. He handed out pretend badges he'd made from cardboard. Best mom, best dad, and, unexpectedly, best future queen to my fiancé. She wore it like a medal of honor, and I saw her eyes shimmer when he wrapped his arms around her. Weeks have passed since then. My ex hasn't shown up uninvited since. She even allowed her sister to visit our son the following weekend, and although they didn't talk much, they didn't argue either. It's a fragile piece, but it's something. As for me, I still look at that peach tree sometimes and marvel at the irony of it all. Planted in love, weathered by betrayal, now standing tall as a quiet witness to growth, mistakes, and second chances. And every time I see the engraving inside the ring, "To my Pharaoh," I remember that the past may shape us, but it doesn't define us. Some stories don't get happy endings, but some, like ours, get new beginnings. If you enjoyed this journey through the twists and turns of life, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take on the story.